Have you ever wondered why some women vanish from a man's world without a trace, leaving an echo that lingers far longer than their presence ever did? It is not mere absence. It is a force, a subtle unraveling of expectation and desire that shatters illusions and confronts the unconscious in ways words rarely capture. To detach completely is to step beyond the compulsion of attachment, to retreat from a hypnotic pull of another's gaze, and to inhabit a space of self-possession so absolute it unsettles even the most anchored hearts. In the silence of her withdrawal, the psyche of those who remain is exposed, raw and unguarded, revealing the hidden projections, unspoken needs, and shadowed desires that most men never dare to examine. She is no longer a participant in the narrative others have written for her. She becomes the author of a life that recognizes no obligation to validate itself through the eyes of another. In her detachment lies a quiet rebellion, a subtle but seismic act of individuation. Jung spoke of this process as a journey toward wholeness, and here in her absence, wholeness is reclaimed not through confrontation, but through deliberate disengagement. The man who once believed his presence indispensable finds himself in a vacuum of introspection, confronted by the truth of what he cannot control, her autonomy. She does not speak, she does not explain. She moves through her own internal landscape, guided by principles that have no need for approval, untouched by the silent entreaties of longing eyes. And in this withdrawal, she exercises a power that is invisible yet irrefutable, a magnetism rooted not in pursuit, but in the undeniable fact that she has chosen herself over being chosen. The act of detachment triggers a subtle shift in perception. Men often interpret this as punishment, as a test of loyalty, or as a withdrawal of love, but it is none of these. It is the natural consequence of a woman confronting her own ego, her own projections, and the relational dynamics that no longer serve her growth. The male unconscious, finely attuned to loss, obsession, and desire, reacts with heightened sensitivity. He feels a vacuum where control once resided, a silent mirror of his insecurities reflected back by her absence. His shadow rises, possessiveness, regret, longing, and at times, even the faint terror of irrelevance. He begins to ask questions he never dared ask when she was present. What did I truly see in her? What did I fail to honor? What illusions have I built to mask my own inadequacies? Her detachment is not a mere strategy, it is an existential declaration. She demonstrates the profound power of boundaries, of refusing to dilute her identity for the comfort of others. She inhabits a world where external validation is irrelevant, where love is no longer a transaction, and where her emotional economy is ruled by authenticity rather than expectation. The very act of stepping away from a relational mirage is an exercise in stoic wisdom. She accepts that she cannot control another's attachment, yet she masters the sovereignty of her own. In this detachment, she models the principle Epictetus extolled. Freedom arises not from possessing, but from relinquishing the compulsion to be possessed. Yet detachment is not born of callousness, it is born of clarity. It is the recognition that attachment often masquerades as intimacy while feeding dependency, entitlement, and unconscious projections. To remove herself from the gravitational pull of these dynamics is to dissolve the subtle addictions that bind the psyche to another's whims. And paradoxically, the more completely she detaches, the more intensely she exists in her own orbit. Her aura, no longer diluted by the pursuit of affirmation, radiates with a magnetic authenticity. She embodies desire without needing to chase it, presence without the need to justify it, and serenity in a world desperate for her response. Those who observe this detachment, friends, lovers, even casual acquaintances, feel a peculiar mixture of awe and unease. Some are drawn irresistibly, as if the very act of self-possession is a siren call, activating a primal recognition of autonomy that has been long suppressed. Others resist, uncomfortable with the power of absence, interpreting it as rejection, when in truth it is the highest form of respect for the self. She is neither punishment nor reward. She is a mirror, reflecting back the unacknowledged parts of the human psyche. Jung called this shadow work, the confrontation with what lies unseen, unspoken, yet desperately influential in our thoughts and actions. In the wake of her departure, the shadow is unveiled, and the unconscious stirs with both longing and fear, wonder and regret. Detachment, therefore, is a crucible. It transforms not only the woman who practices it, but also the men who witness it. It exposes the fissures in dependency, the fragile constructs of ego, and the emotional immaturity that often masquerades as connection. And for the woman, it is a liberation, a reclamation of time, energy, and spirit previously surrendered to the projections and anxieties of another. She moves as though through a sacred space where her value is inherent, immutable, and undeniable. She becomes an archetype, a living testament to the power of choice, autonomy, and self-directed life. Her silence speaks louder than any plea. Her absence is more instructive than any admonition. She does not require explanations or apologies. She does not linger in the shadows of what was. Instead, she cultivates an inner world abundant with curiosity, self-respect, and profound emotional literacy. And as she navigates this landscape, she models a truth that is often too threatening for others to confront, that attraction, influence, and desire are amplified, not through pursuit, but through the unassailable presence of a woman who knows herself completely. Men feel it, even when unspoken, even when unseen. The power of a woman who has detached is a force that reshapes the gravitational pull of every relationship she inhabits. In the space carved by her absence, the mind of a man begins to wrestle with truths long ignored. He notices the nuances he once overlooked, the cadence of her laughter, the subtle curves of her thought, the unspoken commitments she held to herself that he mistook for compliance. Detachment exposes the illusions of intimacy, revealing that connection often masquerades as possession, that affection without boundaries can be a cage disguised as comfort. As he struggles with the sudden void, the unconscious stirs, illuminating the patterns he unconsciously projected onto her, his desires, fears, and insecurities rendered in sharp relief against the backdrop of her autonomy. This confrontation is neither gentle nor immediate. It is a slow, unsettling descent into the recognition of his own shadow. Every regret, every longing, every question he avoided now rises with an intensity that is both intoxicating and painful. He experiences the paradox of human attachment. The closer one thinks they are to possession, the more volatile the loss becomes. Meanwhile, she navigates her interior world with a meticulous grace, attuned to the rhythms of her own psyche. She understands that detachment is not absence from life, but a deep immersion into it on her own terms. Each step she takes away from external expectations is a step toward individuation, toward becoming a woman whose existence is not contingent upon the emotional validation of others. Her power lies in the quiet mastery of her own being. She no longer negotiates her worth, no longer justifies her choices, no longer seeks approval from a world accustomed to her availability. In this self-directed reality, she embodies the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. She cannot dictate the thoughts of others, but she commands the sovereignty of her own mind and heart. And as she moves through this liberated space, she discovers an almost sacred cadence to her existence, a rhythm that is both self-affirming and impervious to intrusion. The psychological effect of her detachment is profound. Men experience a heightened awareness of loss, yet the loss is illusory. It is the absence of control, the refusal to be possessed, that unsettles them most. The psyche reacts with a mixture of fascination and fear, longing and frustration. Some attempt to reclaim her attention, propelled by the instinctive pull of desire, only to encounter the immovable boundary of her choice. Others withdraw, overwhelmed by the mirror she holds to their own shadows, unable to face the reflection of their dependency, their pride, their unacknowledged need for validation. And in this dynamic, one observes the subtle interplay of masculine and feminine energies, the pull of pursuit confronted by the quiet insistence of self-possession, desire encountering refusal, ego encountering unyielding reality. Her detachment is, paradoxically, an act of the deepest intimacy, not with another, but with herself. She witnesses her own patterns, acknowledges the subtle wounds that once dictated her behavior, and chooses to step beyond them. In this process, she confronts the entanglements of attachment, the seduction of approval, and the silent compromises that erode authenticity. By turning inward, she becomes attuned to her own needs, her own truths, and her own rhythms, cultivating a psychological resilience that is invisible yet palpable. Her presence is no longer a gift or a concession. It is a declaration of agency, a living assertion that she belongs first to herself. There is a magnetic quality to such detachment. Men sense it intuitively, even if they cannot articulate it. The very act of withdrawing attention from those who seek it creates an invisible force, a gravitational field of self-possession that draws without manipulation, captivates without coercion, and commands without demand. This is not about power in the conventional sense. It is a power of existence itself, rooted in authenticity and self-respect. She becomes an archetype in motion, a symbol of the feminine principle unbound, unconstrained, and wholly sovereign. Her silence speaks volumes. Her absence teaches lessons no words could convey. And in the invisible theater of psychological interplay, her detachment catalyzes transformation, forcing others to reckon with what they have taken for granted, what they have neglected, and what they have projected onto her being. For those who have loved her, the experience is both excruciating and illuminating. The void she leaves is a crucible for introspection, demanding a reckoning with internalized ego, unprocessed wounds, and unconscious attachment patterns. They confront the uncomfortable truth that attraction is often tied not to who she is, but to what they believe she represents, the mirror of their desires, fears, and unmet needs. And as they grapple with this reality, they are compelled either toward growth or stagnation, awareness or denial. Her detachment is a catalyst, an unspoken lesson in self-responsibility, emotional literacy, and the recognition that no one can inhabit the interior world of another without their consent. And yet, in the quiet of her own space, she is unshaken. Her heart is not embittered, her mind not restless. She cultivates a landscape of inner abundance, where curiosity, creativity, and self-compassion flourish. Each decision to step away, each refusal to chase, is a celebration of autonomy, a reaffirmation that her value is inherent, not contingent, and that her existence does not require the constant negotiation of others' approval. In detachment, she encounters freedom, the kind that echoes in the deepest chambers of the soul and cannot be disrupted by longing eyes or unspoken demands. The woman who detaches completely learns that her presence is magnetic not because it is pursued, but because it is unassailable, undeniable, and profoundly her own. The transformative power of a woman who detaches completely lies not only in the space she creates, but in the awakening she incites within those who remain. Men who have once believed themselves indispensable now wrestle with an unfamiliar force, absence as a teacher. Her withdrawal exposes the illusions they relied upon, the comforting narratives that masked insecurity, the assumptions that cloaked ego, the silent dependencies that had gone unnoticed. Each longing glance unanswered, each attempt at communication met with calm, deliberate distance, serves as a mirror reflecting what they have failed to see in themselves. In this reflection, the subtle cracks of their psyche are illuminated: fear of loss, unacknowledged desire, the compulsive need for validation. And in this confrontation, they are forced, often unwillingly, to reckon with the parts of themselves that they have long denied, the shadow lurking behind bravado, pride, and superficially maintained control. Meanwhile, she inhabits a realm of quiet fortitude, a dimension defined by psychological sovereignty and emotional clarity. Detachment is no retreat into isolation. It is immersion into self-possession. She cultivates her thoughts, her dreams, and her ambitions with a fierce precision that is both magnetic and disarming. The Stoic principles of inner mastery resonate within her. She cannot command the feelings of others, but she wields complete authority over her own responses. In her world, No man, no expectation, no social convention can dictate the measure of her worth. Her autonomy becomes a lens through which the dynamics of attraction, attachment, and projection are redefined. She is not a puzzle to be solved or a prize to be won. She is an archetype of self-realization, a living testament to the power inherent in embracing one's full psychological and emotional spectrum. Detachment does not annihilate intimacy, it transforms it. In withdrawing from relational compulsion, she initiates a higher form of connection, one rooted in authenticity, presence, and self-knowledge. Those who encounter her are confronted with the raw truth of relational psychology. Connection cannot flourish in the shadow of neediness, obsession, or unexamined expectation. She reveals, without speaking, that the most magnetic force is not pursuit but presence, that attraction is not manufactured through attention, but allowed through alignment with one's own integrity. The unconscious recognizes this with an almost visceral response, a mixture of awe, desire, and destabilized certainty. He feels the gravitational shift even before he can comprehend its origin, the quiet assertion of a woman who belongs entirely to herself. Psychologically, her detachment is a crucible for growth, both hers and theirs. She moves with intention, understanding that attachment often perpetuates cycles of projection and ego inflation. By removing herself from these cycles, she breaks the patterns that feed dependency and unconscious fear. Each moment of silence becomes a lesson in emotional literacy, each absence, a reflection of the unacknowledged complexities of human desire. And as she navigates her own interior landscape, she uncovers layers of self that were previously obscured by the compulsion to please, the fear of abandonment, or the subtle allure of relational validation. This journey is not linear nor painless, but it is sovereign and transformative, a testament to the Jungian ideal of individuation, where the self emerges whole, unfragmented by the projections or expectations of others. Her presence, paradoxically, becomes more potent through absence. Men perceive it intuitively. The withdrawal is an unspoken authority, an assertion that she cannot be possessed, that her essence cannot be confined or controlled. Desire, often so easily manipulated by proximity, becomes awakened through the tension of distance, yet it is no longer tethered to control or manipulation. It is the recognition of autonomy, the acknowledgement of a force that is simultaneously tender and unyielding. Her detachment is a study in contrasts, stillness as intensity, absence as influence, silence as declaration. It provokes not through provocation, but through the irresistible power of being unbound. There is an alchemical quality to this process. Through detachment, she transmutes past pain, relational disappointments, and unexamined patterns into wisdom, resilience, and profound self-regard. Her interactions with the world are now calibrated not by fear, longing, or the need to appease, but by deliberate alignment with her inner truth. The men who remain in her orbit, whether near or distant, encounter a phenomenon that is both challenging and magnetic, the confrontation with authentic selfhood, the mirror of their own unexamined shadow, and the undeniable potency of a woman fully realized. Even those who once took her presence for granted feel its weight, its authority, and its quiet insistence on integrity. And yet, she does not linger in the realm of reactive dynamics. She moves freely, guided by inner law, cultivating beauty, curiosity, and depth. Her detachment is not a performance, it is a state of being. She experiences the world with heightened perception, aware of the subtle currents of human desire and vulnerability, but unentangled by them. In her freedom, she models a truth too often feared, that the most captivating force is not manipulation, seduction, or pursuit, it is the unassailable power of self-possession. She exists as an archetype of feminine authority, a living embodiment of the principle that love, attraction, and influence are amplified not by clinging, but by claiming the sovereignty of one's own being. There comes a moment in the trajectory of complete detachment when her liberation begins to ripple outward, touching every aspect of her relational and inner world. No longer tethered to the emotional economies of others, she experiences the profound expansion of her psyche, a spaciousness that allows reflection, creativity, and insight to flourish. Her absence from entangling dynamics does not create emptiness. It cultivates presence, depth, and clarity. The men who had once assumed ownership of her attention now confront an unfamiliar force, the irrefutable reality that she is sovereign, that her desires, choices, and attention are no longer instruments for their validation. They feel an acute tension between longing and respect, a paradoxical attraction to what cannot be compelled, a magnetic pull rooted in the integrity of her detachment. In observing her, one sees the embodiment of Jung's archetypal feminine, the wise woman, the sovereign, the alchemist of self. She does not manipulate through charm or proximity. Instead, she wields a quiet mastery over her own interiority. Her emotional boundaries are ironclad, her awareness of projection acute. She recognizes the subtle ways in which men's unconscious needs, unprocessed wounds, ego insecurities, and shadow desires once sought refuge in her presence. And rather than reacting to or accommodating these dynamics, she allows them to surface, unresolved, forcing a confrontation with reality as it is, not as it is wished to be. This act is terrifying and magnetic, a psychological storm that awakens desire while shattering illusion. In her detachment, she becomes both a mirror and a mystery, reflecting unacknowledged truths while remaining impenetrable in her sovereignty. There is a cruel beauty in this tension. Men feel drawn to her precisely because she refuses to be theirs. They chase only to find themselves navigating a landscape of absence, confronted with questions they cannot answer. What is it about her I truly desire? Was I ever in love with her, or merely the idea I constructed? In the quiet she has cultivated, they are forced into self-reflection, shadow work, and the painful recognition of ego-driven patterns that have long guided their relational lives. This is not punishment. It is the consequence of encountering a woman who prioritizes self-possession above all else. Desire, obsession, longing, all are intensified, yet their fulfillment lies forever out of reach, suspended in the elegant tension of her choice. Her internal landscape, by contrast, is expansive and serene. Freed from the gravitational pull of external validation, she cultivates an inner richness that draws from curiosity, intellect, and self-respect. Each choice to remain apart, each refusal to chase or explain, becomes an affirmation of her own worth and sovereignty. She learns that true attraction is not cultivated through effort or compromise, but emerges naturally when one's inner world is fully inhabited and fully owned. Jungian individuation finds its purest expression here. She integrates her shadow, embraces her desires without attachment, and navigates her life with a conscious alignment of spirit, mind, and emotion. Her detachment is not coldness. It is a profound embrace of her own power and wholeness. For men, the psychological repercussions are subtle yet profound. The absence of her validation triggers both fear and fascination, activating deep-seated instincts and archetypal scripts. They confront what they cannot command, desire what cannot be possessed, and reckon with the inadequacy of superficial control. Even those who are emotionally mature experience disorientation. The gravitational field of her detachment reveals dependency, entitlement, and the habitual conflation of attention with affection. They are forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that attraction, influence, and desire cannot be manufactured through manipulation or proximity. They are amplified only by presence, integrity, and authenticity. In this confrontation, her absence functions as an unspoken curriculum in emotional literacy, self-awareness, and relational accountability. Yet she is not vengeful or reactive. Her detachment is an art, a deliberate cultivation of space and autonomy, not a weapon to provoke or punish. She understands the subtle alchemy of influence, that absence, presence, and intention, when aligned with authenticity, generate a magnetic force more powerful than pursuit, more compelling than seduction, more transformative than proximity. She is simultaneously tender and impenetrable, accessible in her wisdom yet inviolable in her sovereignty. Her life becomes a testament to the principles she embodies, that emotional freedom is cultivated, not granted, that attraction is an echo of authenticity, and that power emerges from mastery of self, not domination of others. In her presence, now reclaimed fully for herself, the world shifts imperceptibly. Those who remain within orbit, whether through longing, reflection, or admiration, sense the profound difference between chasing and witnessing, between desire rooted in projection and desire awakened by authenticity. Her detachment teaches that the most intoxicating presence is one that does not plead, does not explain, and does not bend. It is an assertion of wholeness, a declaration that life is not a negotiation for attention, but a canvas for self-realization. Every glance that lingers upon her, every thought of her in absence, is a silent acknowledgement of the power inherent in choice, autonomy, and self-possession. The ultimate revelation of complete detachment emerges not in the reaction of others, but in the woman herself. She discovers that freedom is not a mere concept, it is a lived, breathing state of being. As she moves through the world without seeking approval, without justifying her choices, without tethering her value to the perception of another, she encounters the profound serenity of self-possession. Her mind, once burdened by the subtle compulsions of relational expectation, now resonates with clarity. Her heart, once entangled in the currents of need and validation, now beats with the rhythm of its own accord. Detachment is no longer a strategy. It becomes an extension of her being, a natural expression of her sovereignty and self-respect. The world may attempt to impose its narratives, but she remains untouchable in the quiet integrity of her life, unbending yet fluid, firm yet graceful. There is a sublime power in this state. She is fully alive, fully awake, and fully herself. Jung's teachings illuminate the depth of this awakening, framing it as a process of integration and wholeness. By confronting her own shadow, acknowledging desires, fears, and past wounds, she cultivates an emotional intelligence that radiates effortlessly. She is no longer a reactive participant in the dramas of others. She is the conscious observer, the architect of her own destiny. Every choice, every boundary, every moment of silence becomes a testament to her autonomy. Men, even those who once believed they held influence over her, are forced to reckon with a presence that cannot be coerced or diminished. Her detachment becomes the silent teacher of emotional literacy, revealing the unseen, illuminating the hidden, and reminding all who encounter her that true connection is rooted in authenticity, not dependence. This detachment transforms the very nature of desire. Men feel it instinctively, a gravitational pull toward what is whole and unclaimed. Yet desire alone cannot penetrate the fortress of self-possession she has cultivated. It becomes a lesson in longing and reflection, a confrontation with the ego and the shadow. Those who were once possessive, controlling, or inattentive are forced to see themselves through the mirror of her absence. Obsession is illuminated for what it is, an unmet need for validation projected outward rather than cultivated within. The allure of a woman who has detached is not in her compliance or availability, but in the revelation that authentic power lies in the integrity of her being, in the unwavering choice to inhabit herself fully. Her detachment reframes attraction as an acknowledgement of autonomy rather than a demand for attention. Within herself, she experiences a rebirth. The chains of past relational compulsions, societal expectation, and internalized doubt fall away, leaving only the raw, luminous core of her essence. She does not seek to fill voids with attention or affirmation. She creates abundance within, an inexhaustible reservoir of self-worth and emotional resilience. Her inner landscape is rich with curiosity, creativity, and reflection. She cultivates passions and pursuits untainted by external pressure. She becomes a testament to the power of self-directed life, the embodiment of Jungian individuation, a living archetype of feminine sovereignty. In this state, her aura is magnetic, not because she is pursued, but because she exists in total alignment with herself. Presence, integrity, and self-possession generate a force more compelling than any act of seduction, more lasting than any fleeting interaction, and more transformative than any attempt at control. Her detachment is both a mirror and a compass. For those who once sought to possess her, it reflects their own unresolved shadows, illuminating dependence, projection, and unexamined emotional patterns. For herself, it provides direction, clarity, and an unshakable sense of purpose. The freedom she experiences is not rooted in separation from others, but in the sovereignty of choice. She chooses where to place her attention, how to invest her energy, and which relationships merit her presence. She moves through life with precision and grace, embodying the truth that detachment is not emptiness, it is potency. It is the conscious refusal to dilute oneself for the comfort or validation of another. It is the embrace of self so profound that the need to chase, to plead, or to compromise is rendered obsolete. And in this ultimate embodiment of detachment, a remarkable paradox reveals itself. By stepping away, she becomes irresistibly magnetic. By releasing control, she exerts influence. By existing fully for herself, she teaches the world to see her clearly. Desire, fascination, and respect emerge naturally, not as demands, but as acknowledgments of her sovereignty. In the stillness of her self-possession, she is a force of transformation, quiet yet undeniable, tender yet unyielding, present yet untouchable. The lessons of her detachment are profound. Authenticity eclipses performance, self-possession outweighs compliance, and freedom is the ultimate power. The woman who detaches completely is both a revelation and a rebirth. She moves through life with a profound sense of alignment, free from the chains of external expectation, unshaken by longing, and untethered by the projections of others. Her journey is one of emotional mastery, psychological wholeness, and archetypal power. And as she navigates her world, she leaves behind not absence, but awakening, a testament to the truth that the deepest form of attraction, the most profound form of influence, and the truest form of connection emerge from sovereignty, integrity, and self-realization. She teaches without speaking, without pleading, without compromise, that the essence of feminine power is not to be found in pursuit, but in the quiet mastery of being wholly and unapologetically herself. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.